Okay, Oscar fans, you've got right here two veteran journalists who, between us, have covered the FYC Oscar slash award beat longer than Methuselah lived on the planet.
Since before time began.
So the thing that gets at the core of
And,
everybody.
and you are Tom O'Neil and I'm Ray Richmond.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And Ray is our news and features editor at Gold Derby. I'm the editor, and I think, Ray, the hardest thing about our job is it is when the Oscars just go off the rails and do something incredibly stupid.
Like if they, like say, if on the 12th they decided Triangle of Sadness had to be the best picture.
That would be shocking. Yes, yes, but it did get at least a few critical reviews. I'm talking about things like, here's a good example: the greatest movie ever made, according to every single survey put out by the American Film Institute and everywhere else, is Citizen Kane. It lost Best Picture that year to the movie that holds the record for having been the only Best Picture winner at the Oscars, released on VHS tape, that had the lowest sales because nobody wanted it. How Green Was My Valley.
Yeah, nobody wanted How Green Was My Valley.
So when those kinds of things happen, you just shake your head. What are your favorite Oscar outrages?
I'll tell you how green your valley was. It was so green it was brown. It was and long forgotten. And Citizen Kane, obviously William Randolph Hearst figured out a way to rig it so it would never win Best Picture. Right. You have to believe he played a hand. But yes, there are so many outrages, Tom. How do you keep it to 1, 2, 3, 4, even 5, even 10? Outrages are what the Oscars are all about. And in fact, let me just throw one out there.
Yeah, go for it, baby.
And this is not a typical outrage, which is why I brought it up. There are some, like Citizen Kane, that's like a Hall of Fame outrage. But this one, Rocky winning Best Picture in 1977. Now, some people think, it was a great boxing movie. It was an underdog, just like Rocky Balboa. It had Sylvester Stallone, who had, held the studio and said, I want to make this movie. You want to make this movie, but I have to star in it, even though no one knows who I am. But so the fact that Rocky won, people think, well, underdog, of course, it's great. But do you know what Rocky beat that year? It beat All the President's Men,
which was the front runner. Yeah,
right. Well, probably the greatest journalism film ever made, maybe the best political drama ever made. It beat Network.
Oh, which is a masterpiece.
A masterpiece, the best media satire ever.
Absolutely.
And it beat Taxi Driver, which is probably the best character study of a ticking time bomb. It beat three classic legendary films. And today, and any one of those three would have won Best Picture in a different year, except for the year that Rocky, just because people were, because he beat Apollo Creed and
well, it was also, you mentioned 1977 was the year of the ceremony, but they were voting on 76 movies, so they were in this patriotic fervor.
That's right. All of these movies that came out in the bicentennial.
And if I may be wrong on this, in which case somebody in the comment section can slap me around, but I think that when the LA Film Critics got stalled that year on what will they pick for Best Picture, somebody in the group shouted, let's just go for Rocky, something they would never expect snobs like us to pick, and so they all kind of, like sheep ran
and
off.
So everybody got behind that. Yeah. I believe that that's possible. But what a year to decide to do that. Oh, I mean, yeah, I know it was rah, 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 America for 76, but, you watch any of those movies now and you're just entranced all over again. If you watch Network, you just bask in the brilliance. If you watch All the President's Men, I've seen it probably a dozen times, being a journalist, and you're just like, wow. You're just wowed every time you see it. It's still the greatest journalism film, even though Spotlight was a great film and won Best Picture. We had, even women, or She Said this year was a great journalism film, telling the story, telling the story about Harvey Weinstein.
Right.
But there was never anything better than All the President's Men, and the idea that it would lose to Rocky is just a joke.
Yeah, it really is. Network is a movie I rewatch every chance I get because it's so absolute brilliant.
And it's our theme. It's our theme, you and me. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. That's us. So give me one of your outrages, Tom.
Well, I think the whole way the Oscars are voted on is an outrage. Consider this. At the Emmys, they stay consistent to peer group. So if you're a cinematographer, you can only vote for other cinematographers on the first round, the nominees, and on the second round. But on the second round, you can also vote in categories like Best Picture, programming ones. But you can't meander out of your little lane. If you declare what what branch of the Academy you're a member of, and then you stay there. So you can only vote for cinematographers, and then the programs. At the Oscars, they do it by peer group on round one. So cinematographers and so that means hair and makeup people, let's pick on them for a second, can't vote in that category. Fine, they're not qualified according to the criteria being set up by the Academy. But on round two, everybody gets to vote for everybody, for anything, any race. So how is it that they're qualified, the hair and makeup people, to vote for the best, the winner, but not for the nomination? It's so illogical, it's absurd.
Yeah, why don't they keep it consistent one way or the other? Either it's open all the time or it's never open to everyone.
Right.
So you're right. So you have because it's peer groups, you have really great nominees and great nominations, and then ridiculous choices for winner. They're just setting it up that way. I mean, like as if they did it on purpose.
I know.
And that's why we end up seeing these crazy decisions like Crash winning Best Picture.
Brokeback Mountain that year had set a new record for having won the most Best Picture awards if you count all the critics awards,
leading up to the Oscars, right?
Leading up to the Oscars, and on Oscar night, it won all those categories that you need in order to win Best Picture. It won screenplay, it won director for Ang Lee, and the winner is when Jack Nicholson famously.
Jack Nicholson was like, it was like a question. The winner is Crash.
And then people like Ernest Borgnine and Tony Curtis had the stupidity to come out and say they just did outright gay bashing. And in Ernest Borgnine's case, he said, "This is hilarious. Just think about the illogic of this." In an outrage over Brokeback Mountain, he said, "Well, if John Wayne were alive today, he'd be rolling over in his grave." What is a living person doing in a grave, John?
Well, it sounds ridiculous that homophobia would have caused this loss in Hollywood, where 2/3 of the people that work in the industry are probably gay. Yeah, so it's got to be self-loathing. But Crash, I almost walked out of it when I was watching it. I was offended. Here, I'm a Los Angeles guy my whole life, and basically they cast Los Angeles as this boiling cesspool of racism. Where every time you drive a block, somebody's ready to attack you because of the color of your skin or your ethnicity. And I just thought it was a joke. I'm just like, are they making fun of this? It was just so transparently ridiculous.
Well,
and
it was transparent too that it was the reason why they didn't vote for it. And that was just really tragic. Liberal Hollywood, which is supposed to be, it's bashed all the time by the conservative elite as Sodom and Gomorrah, and it should be ashamed of itself for its lack of family values. And then they just wouldn't give it to the gay cowboy movie. They just weren't going to do it.
Despite the gay cowboy movie winning literally everything leading up to that moment.
I know. Well, the reason we love the Oscars, though, is that well, first of all, we know there's no such thing as the best of anything, right? Uh, I was telling Steven Spielberg this at some party for the Fablemans about a month ago.
Good name dropping moment.
Okay, I good, really, really, and I was surprised he didn't know this. And I said, and I'll tell you what he said after it's. Oh, you're gonna laugh your ass off. He he said, I said, Stephen, do you know that your movie Schindler's List is the only film in Oscar history or an awards history to win every best picture at every single major Hollywood award across the board, a clean sweep. But I want you to notice that I said Hollywood award, because the one Best Picture award you didn't win that year for Schindler's List was the People's Choice Award. And you can laugh about that today because it's just done by an online poll. But in those days, it was done by the Gallup poll. So it was an accurate reflection of what America really thought. And do you know what won that year, Stephen? And he looked at me and said, no. I said, you did, for Jurassic Park. And what he said was so funny at the end of it. He said, good, now I can kick Rita Moreno's ass the next time. He said, the next time she mentions that fucking EGOT thing to me.
That's great. That's a great story. The People's Choice, didn't that used to, wasn't that Army Archerd show? I thought that he had started it.
Maybe he did. I don't know. That's a good question. But it's, of course, it's a joke now. I don't think, is it even still on? I don't know.
I don't think so. Well, if Gold Derby doesn't cover it, it clearly doesn't exist anymore. So give me another outrage.
Well, I'll give you the great.
I'm in an outrageous mood.
Good. Well, let's get mad about this. But and the reason for what I'm about to cite as an example is the same thing, the theme that I just set up a moment ago, which is they're not voting on the best of anything at the Oscars. No movie has swept the board completely, right? So we know that Hollywood is insane, number one, because it spends $300 million a year to win a fake gold statuette that costs only $500 to manufacture, and for something that doesn't even exist, meaning a best picture or a best of something. So that's how crazy they are. But what they are great about is giving us on the outside, out here in fan land, a window into the inner family of Hollywood. The best example of that would have been the year of James Cameron up against his ex-wife, Catherine Bigelow, right? And Hollywood was picking sides in a broken marriage. And the Oscars had never picked a woman for Best Director before. You could either make history as a voter and go for the Hurt Locker, and also a real classy woman beloved in this town, or you could go for the arrogant, I'm the king of the world guy over here. And of course she won. But they're voting on other things. My favorite example, and then I'll get into the outrage in a moment, because it kind of feeds into the same thing. Do you know, Master and Commander was nominated for 10 Academy Awards. I think everybody associated with that movie got a nomination except the night cleaning crew. but the one person who did not get nominated was the Master and Commander himself, Russell Crowe, because he had just thrown that phone at that hotel clerk in Soho.
And phone throwers do not get nominations.
And he was accused of having that fight with the BAFTA producer, cutting off his poem in his rambling poem of an acceptance speech and cutting to a commercial break. So isn't that amazing? You play the star role in that, and you're not even nominated. What this award is what Hollywood thinks of itself. So take the two biggest losers in Oscar history, who've never won at all among actors are Richard Burton, if you could believe it, never having won an Oscar, and Peter O'Toole, never having won an Oscar. They both went to their grave as tied as Oscar's biggest losers. Or no, by that point, Peter, I think, had pulled ahead by one. But when Burton died, he was tied with O'Toole.
And they gave Peter O'Toole an honorary
one. Right. They always do that.
Which he hated. He was like, I don't want to be put out to pasture. I want another chance.
I know. But people like Goldie Hawn and Red Buttons have Oscars. I mean, come on.
Red Buttons.
But here's what you have to think about. Why would they pick on Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole? Well, it's the Russell Crowe thing all over again. They were the biggest hooligans in town. They showed up late on every set. They were constantly
condescending and probably alcoholic. Well, certainly Burton was alcoholic.
Certainly alcoholic. And some of Katharine Hepburn's stories of waiting for Peter O'Toole during the shoot of Lion in Winter were hilarious. And the way she smacked him down and made sure he got to the set early the next day because nobody messed with her. Right?
You will behave. Yeah. But so those guys win and those guys lose, excuse me, and Red Buttons and Goldie Hawn win.
You could ask, where is Brenda Fricker today? You know, I mean, there are a lot of actors that they deliberately don't vote for because of their behavior.
You know, they act like it's always quality based, but so much of it is personality contest.
It's all personality.
Yeah, it's who you like and who you don't like, and you're never going to vote for the one you don't like. If you have any kind of personal animosity toward them due to a story, due to some kind of perceived slight on the set, it's always going to manifest itself in taking it out on them at the Oscars, you know, in the biggest hurt you can. So you wonder what Alfred Hitchcock and Stanley Kubrick did to piss people off. He was nominated for Rebecca in 1941. Lifeboat 1945, Spellbound in 1946, Rear Window in 55, and Psycho in 61. Lost.
Yeah.
Lost all of them, and they gave him the Thalberg Award in 68. I'm going to also go through the fact that Stanley Kubrick won one Oscar. Did you know what category it was for?
No, what?
Visual effects. He was part of the visual effects team on 2001.
Wow.
But he lost. He lost for writing and directing and picture for Dr. Strangelove. He lost for writing and directing for 2001. He lost for writing and directing and picture for A Clockwork Orange. He lost for writing and directing and picture for Barry Lyndon, and lost for writing for Full Metal Jacket. Never got it. He only got that one for 2001. Never for directing. If they gave out Oscars for largest number of takes per film, I think he would have won. Wasn't he notorious for taking like 10 months, a year? On the set.
Yeah, and then compare him to someone like Clint Eastwood, one take, next, shoot.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, you know, the actors freak out. Yeah.
But Hitchcock and Kubrick never won. So if you didn't win at the Oscars, you're in very good company. But that's outrageous. How is it possible that two of the maybe top 5 greatest directors in Hollywood history never won an Oscar?
Well, speaking of Hitchcock, and that year you mentioned Rear Window, that was the famous year of one of the greatest outrages ever in Hollywood history, which was Judy Garland losing for A Star Is Born to Grace Kelly in The Country Girl. And that
and no one could figure out how and why to this day.
Well, they did at the time. It's hard for us to remember now. That was Grace Kelly's super year as a superstar. She was in 2 Hitchcock movies, Rear Window and Dial M for Murder. Plus, she was in this Country Girl, where she's the long-suffering wife of alcoholic Bing Crosby. and the long-suffering wife always wins, whether it's Jennifer Connelly in The Beautiful Mind or Shirley Booth and Come Back a Little Sheba. It's one of those classic roles they love to give.
Because all the people in the film academy are long suffering themselves. So they relate.
So, but the reason, I mean, there were two reasons. It was such an outrageous loss. Her Garland had never won an Oscar. They'd given her a tiny little juvenile honorary Oscar the year of Wizard of Oz, and then she and her husband Sid Luft commissioned the whole thing from scratch. They got Moss Hart and everybody together. They got the whole production put together, and so it was her comeback in every way, and it was it's one of the greatest movies to this day ever made. Groucho Marx said upon her loss, "It's the worst robbery since Brinks." But Ray, think about this. Judy Garland never showed up on a set on time. She was wobbling around with drinks, and the latter part of her life, she used to introduce herself as, "Hello, I'm what's left of Judy Garland."
Is that true? Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so that's the thing, that's what everyone always has to remember, is if there's sometimes the outrages are entirely predictable in advance, because people, you're always being judged. If you're a great person, you may not even have the talent, but you're often going to win because people like you. Right. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. Just like, you got to believe Marissa Tomei probably, made a lot of friends on the set of My Cousin Vinny, and had a great reputation and ended up winning. And
for a comedy, which is really rare.
Exactly. And you know what? This is the 30th anniversary of her win this year. She won in 93. And I am outraged on her behalf that there has been outrage over her win for all of these years. She was pretty good in it. And it was also a lead role, parading and supporting. So and that happens too, exactly, where you have a really substantial role, and often against people that don't have nearly the same kind of substance. Right. But everyone acted like, oh my God, this is the worst decision in the history of the Academy. It became, Snopes actually addresses it on their website.
Oh, really?
Because the presumption was Jack Palance got it wrong, and that they made a cover up to save Palance. that it was such a horrible decision. It had to be Jack Palance fucking it up somehow. But so the Academy ended up, saying no, that's simply not true. They scotched that, and Snopes had to address it. But when you look at, she was up against some great nominees: Judy Davis for Husbands and Wives, Joan Plowright for Enchanted April, Vanessa Redgrave for Howard's End, Miranda Richardson for Damage. I mean, it's a great collection of actresses and great performances, but she deserved it. Yeah. And I think it's time to rescue Marissa Tomei's win from the scrap heap of Oscardom.
Also, she plays kind of a bimbo-ish character, so that the Oscars tend to be very snobbish, especially in recent years, and it's all traceable to the Oscars used to, back in the 60s and 70s, always have. I mean, they nominated The Exorcist and Airplane for Best Picture, Towering Inferno, those Poseidon Adventure. They all got nominated at least.
Yeah, the Poseidon Adventure. I just looked this up. Did you know it got like 9 nominations?
I know.
I think Red Buttons got nominated for it. Shelley Winters was nominated for it. I was embarrassed on her. She could have won.
I know. And she was so obnoxious in the movie.
But it actually did win. You know what it won for? It won for the song "The Morning After."
That's right.
Right.
Well, it used to be that blockbusters had a chance, and then they stopped having a chance around the mid 1990s when VHS tapes were sent to voters. That started around Braveheart, and then really caught on. Harvey Weinstein made it an industry, and that's how he got nominations for movies like My Left Foot and the others. Was he put all his marketing money into sending VH tapes in those days to Academy members, so they had no excuse but to watch it. So, and of course, I'm sure you remember as a journalist when we started getting these DVDs or VHS tapes early. It was so precious,
Oh my God!
Friends had it.
Look at me, man!
Yeah,
Look at what I've got. Now it's like if you get a DVD, you're like you're dusting off your DVD player in your garage, seeing if it still works.
I know, I know. But
you know, yes, and then art house stuff ended up taking over everything.
And then art house stuff. Every now there are rare years where Titanic wins or the Lord of the Rings.
And those are always the biggest ratings, of course. I mean, the Titanic year still holds the record for by far the largest ratings for a telecast in Oscar history.
But I really believe that was a great movie in every way. I know,
you know
that
people like to disparage it because they like to disparage Cameron.
Right.
But I agree, it was a great film. And boy, ask my daughter, who was 8 years old at the time and saw it 16 times.
My little niece was about 8 years old when I took her and her little twin brother to Titanic, and I had one of them by each hand as we were the theater was packed. I didn't dare lose either one of them. But little Judy stops me right there, and there's this herd of people about to knock us down, and she just looked up at me and she said, "Uncle Tom, that was the greatest movie I've ever seen." An 8-year-old,
And I'll bet it was. What have you seen? 4 movies, kid?
I know. It was all the same movie, The Wizard of Oz. But no, it was a great movie. It was fashionable. Kenny Turan, when he was full time at the LA Times, just was writing an article per day, just beating up on the script, and stuff like that.
No, I can understand Cameron being pissed off about that and feeling ganged up on, because he got a lot of crap for what he said at the Oscars on the stage. People have short memories on everything else, but long memories for some reason on what you say when you're accepting. They
Right.
never forget a goddamn word of your acceptance speech. Poor Sally Field. That acceptance speech has been bastardized like crazy. Oh, Ray, you love me. You really like. No, what she said is, now I can't deny that you like me. I mean, and it was very heartfelt and very sweet. And somehow she's been savaged for you can never give a heartfelt utterance in an Oscar show, or people attack you. That says everything about Hollywood. If it's from your heart, they make fun of you.
I think the single greatest acceptance speech ever was when Shirley MacLaine did the opposite of humility and just held up her Oscar and said, "I deserve this." It's like, right on, Shirley, baby. Good, right on.
One of my favorite moments from an award show was last week at the SAGs, where Michelle Yeoh, she was just, you could just see, I mean, boy, that's the most popular win I've ever seen in an award show. Everyone was always just, reaching out to her from the stage even before she won. Then when she finally won, there she is. And you could just see the excitement bubbling through her, and it just bursts out of her. And she went, "Fuck." And it was just so intense and so
Sure. I mean,
and so perfect.
From her point of view, Kate Blanchett was winning everything, even though Everything Everywhere was sweeping all the other categories. Why wasn't the lead star carried with it? But now she's caught up, and she's the likely winner on Oscar night.
Well, because they hadn't voted yet when they saw the SAGs, right? So that's gonna Everything Everywhere All at Once is in the catbird seat for sure for almost everything.
Yeah.
Except lead actor, and I mean, there's still a few races as we sit here today that are still up for grabs, like best actor. But
yeah, that's a toughie.
Speaking of best actor, can I give you one more outrage?
Yeah.
My outrage is Al Pacino winning best actor for Scent of a Woman.
Oh, that's a disgrace for the book.
Oh my friggin' God, the guy chewed more scenery than a locust swarm. I have never, even he probably is embarrassed. I mean,
well, I think he was.
Do you know who he beat?
Who?
Robert Downey Jr. in Chaplin. Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven. Okay. Stephen Ray in The Crying Game. And Denzel Washington and Malcolm X. They give this to Al Pacino for Scent of a Woman?
Well, that's because wasn't that his 7th nomination or loss or something? Yeah.
Yes. And that's the thing. You know, you talk about a streak. Nominated in 73 for Godfather, 74 for Serpico, 75 for Godfather 2, 76 for Dog Day Afternoon. He lost to Joel Grey for Godfather, Jack Lemmon for Serpico for Save the Tiger, Art Carney and Harry and Tonto for Godfather 2. Art Carney and Nicholson for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in his Dog Day Afternoon. Wow. But yes, that was makeup time. That's another thing that Oscars do, right, Tom? Is they make up for the past. They give you, if you've lost enough and you're a big enough performer, they give you they give you an unofficial career achievement.
Yeah, they do it all the time. You can't, when you look back at the career of Paul Newman, you don't say, gee, The Color of Money was his greatest performance. You know,
it's insane.
That. You know, I'm sure that even Sandra Bullock's mother must be embarrassed over her daughter winning for The Blind Side.
Yeah, how did that happen? But Art Carney, Harry and Todd, he was talking to a bird the whole time, right?
Let me tell you an Art Carney story about awards, though, because
really?
this is hilarious, but right on target. Jackie Gleason, remember, who gave himself
never won an Emmy,
and he gave himself the title TV's great one,
the great one.
So I talked to his widow when I was writing my book on the Emmys, and asked her, you know, what was his feeling about it. You know, she said, oh my God, you could never mention it. She said, and you know, he was fond of just getting in his car and riding over to Art Carney's house just to hang out and the rest of it. She said, the minute that she said, I saw Gleason going for the door, I'd say, where are you going? She goes, oh, I'm just going over to Art's house to say hi. She said, okay. And then she had to pick up the phone, call Art Carney and say, hi, he'd won 5 for playing Gleason's sidekick. Gleason. So he was running and putting these Oscars up in a closet, throwing a blanket over it just as the doorbell's ringing, and closing the closet so that Gleason wouldn't see all his Emmys.
Oh my God. Wow. But you know, the sidekick always wins. Didn't Don Knotts win 4 or 5 of them too?
Yeah, he won 5 and he was unbeaten. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The sidekick always wins. But Art Carney, you know who he beat the year of Harry and Tonto? He beat not just Pacino in Godfather 2, but Dustin Hoffman and Lenny and Jack Nicholson in Chinatown. It's like,
wow.
You know, sometimes these things, at the time it was like, oh, okay. Hindsight, you can just see that sometimes these things are criminal.
Well, you know, that's a good example. Like when Glenda Jackson won for Women in Love, she was in the movie, 5 minutes? But she was real super cool because that Elizabeth miniseries was on PBS at the time. So everyone was talking about it. It was the era of miniseries like Roots and others that were America would just make the water.
It was like a national a national thing where everyone was watching together.
Right. So Glenda Jackson didn't really win for Women in Love. It was just, she was just so cool and just, they loved defiance, and had such a defiant nature. She did not attend the Oscars. She told the press, why would she ever attend? She said, the Oscars are a public hanging. And what did they do? They turned around and gave her another one for a movie she didn't deserve called A Touch of Class.
I remember. Oh yeah, that's right. I remember that one. Yeah. Yeah. How did she win for A Touch of Class?
She gave no performance in that movie. It's just, you know, Ray, that I am a great actual collector of awards memorabilia. I own, for example, the Tony Award for Best Play, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the producer's version, not the writer, not Albies. and I own the Ben-Hur's Golden Globe for Best Picture and all these kinds of things. But this is what you get when you get nominated for an Oscar. And this is one of the rare Oscar nominations that Charlie Chaplin ever had. So when the Oscars were invented, remember, they were created, the Academy was, by the five studios as a con job, telling the five unions of or all the unions really of Hollywood, oh, let's not have separate negotiations, or constantly having strikes and fights over salary. We're going to create one idealistic place where we can all get together and resolve all our differences at once, right, guys? So it was the five studio chiefs who ran it. So no, I mean, they're not going to stand up. That's why Walter Brennan kept winning. Remember, in the supporting category, three times.
That's right.
All the extras, his people were voting, right? So Chaplin, at the very first Oscars, he got like 7 or 8, maybe 10 nominations or something. He was disqualified from every single one of them. They were issued, and they were revolt, because they were so angry at him for going out and creating his own studio with Mary Pickford and
dare he?
Right, exactly. And Doug Fairbanks. But they punish him, but they didn't punish Mary Pickford. She won the Oscar for Best Actress in the second year of the Oscars. And they didn't punish her husband, Doug Fairbanks, who was president of the Motion Picture Academy. But he was there with Charlie Chaplin, with United Artists, creating their own studio to get out of this monopolistic lock that those moguls had over all the talent. But so Chaplin then got in all kinds of trouble with young ladies and lots of other issues, and of course his liberal views and flirtation with communism or Marxism. He just had to flee abroad, and then lived his last days out in Switzerland.
Except for that one last Oscar appearance in 75, 76, something like that. 72, yes. 72.
Yes. A good year, a good memory. And he came back and gave a beautiful, beautiful speech for that honorary Oscar, and then went back to Switzerland. And he won the next year for a movie he had made 20 years earlier called Limelight. And it was never released in Los Angeles. So the studio said, you know what, we've got this Chaplin movie that's technically eligible. I'm still sure he was probably gone by then. but we need to release it in Los Angeles. It'll be Oscar eligible. Why not? So the year after they gave him that honorary, he was nominated for Limelight. This is his nomination, and he won.
Wow. How cool that you have it. That's great.
He probably never even saw this. They probably never even sent it to him. You know?
He was sure was not treated right.
No, he wasn't. But he was defiant, properly defiant in response, because he was such a genius. The whole point of the Oscars is to celebrate people who take creative chances and all of that.
Should be, yeah. Any other outrages?
I might have one more.
All right, good.
All right, here we go. This one really fries my beans, baby. The Showdown, was it 1950 that All About Eve was up for Best Picture and won? Bette Davis in one of her greatest roles ever. Up against Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard. I mean, just a masterclass of brilliant acting. And so the Oscars in those days were on the radio, and Gloria Swanson was sitting next to Judy Holliday, who was also nominated for a Broadway comedy called Born Yesterday. And so there's a famous picture of Gloria Swanson sitting there next to, and it's in my book even, I should pull it up, and sitting next to Judy Holliday in New York at some nightclub. Betty Davis is back in LA. They're just, those two divas are just waiting, to see who could take down the other one. And they said, and the winner is Judy Holliday. Now, there is no way that is an Oscar-winning performance. She plays a kind of bimbo of a gangster, and it's very funny. It's a classic comedy, but at this moment, when a photographer caught Gloria Swanson sitting next to Judy Holliday, a reporter overheard Gloria Swanson leaning over to Judy Holliday going, "Congratulations, my dear, but couldn't you have waited till next year?"
That's fantastic. Wow. It's crazy that those two were up the same year. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Betty Davis.
And Betty Davis,
I would imagine she did not suffer loss as well.
No, she didn't. And she had been president of the Academy at one point. Of course, she was a gross alcoholic and very mean to people. But she was also kind of celebrated for that defiance and for that independence. But she
there weren't a lot of women like that back then. I mean,
no.
that took those chances and that were kind of in your face to the powers that be.
And got away with it. Yeah. And so and that's why we can thank that part of her nature for the fact that, I mean, she never would have done what is probably her greatest movie, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. She never would have made that movie if she had remained this great iconic star. She did it for, she did it for the money. She couldn't stand Joan Crawford. They hated each other.
Yeah, that became a TV series. They hated each other. So.
I know. It was a good one too. Ryan Murphy produced it. But that's why, they're just not voting on the best of anything. They're giving us little windows into who we like and who we don't. And that's fascinating. The year that Jennifer Lawrence won for Silver Linings Playbook, I think is when the Oscars are at their best. Let's give them some credit now. That was also the year of the Hunger Games. Jennifer Lawrence was now officially the queen of Hollywood and America's princess. And remember, she tripped a little going up the stage. She was so excited. And it was the combination of that moment in her career, those movies, just what a delightful person she seemed to be during interviews and all of that. It was a crowning moment that the Oscars could be proud of. And there were many others that they can be proud of.
Absolutely.
But I love it when that happens.
Yeah, me too. I thought, even though a lot of people thought it was a little bit of a lightweight film, I thought it was great that Coda won last year.
Yeah, give me your pro Coda argument.
It just, I loved the fact that a movie that really centered on people with a disability, and were so comfortable with it and had such a wonderful ease with each other, and it was so pro family and pro disability community, because as we know, Hollywood discriminates against minorities, against people with disabilities, against everyone until it becomes fashionable not to.
Right.
And so for one shining moment, I think it became fashionable to embrace people with disabilities. And I wish it wasn't just a trend. I wish it was actually part of the nature of the beast. And we could see it repeatedly. But I loved the fact that a film like that could kind of come out of nowhere the last month.
And that's what made it to me dramatic, was it really, Apple pushed its campaign late. And so it just started cresting slowly, and then broke through. It was a great, we had Gold Derby see this as a race, and Coda's triumph was really a great dramatic win to see.
Absolutely.
But we love the Oscars anyway, just because they're so absurd. It's after all, it's just gold plated.
Exactly. That which says it all.
Just remember that all you viewers out there, we have this exaggerated reverence for film. We call it the silver screen, but TV is the boob tube, and we just deride it. And now it's television that's putting out the best
It's
program.
all reversed.
I know.
Exactly. And there almost isn't any traditional film industry to speak of anymore. It's all streaming and TV. So TV is getting the last laugh, as are we.
As are we. So, all right. So let's, we'll have a lot to be outraged about next time. But thanks, Ray. This has been fun.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tom. This has been great.